He didn't just leave her. He slowed the car beside a lonely gas station on the edge of town, told her to step out for a minute, and drove away with her best friend and his mother still sitting in the seats where love and family used to be. That afternoon, Elena Marin, 7 months pregnant, tired, and trying to pretend everything was fine, thought they were going for a short drive to clear their minds and maybe talk things through. She trusted her husband, Marcus. She trusted her best friend, Talia. She had spent 5 years trying to earn the approval of his mother, Sylvia, no matter how cold the woman stayed. She left her phone on the charger because Sylvia said, "You don't need distractions today." She left her small purse and wallet on the same table because Marcus said, "I've got my card. We won't be long." She didn't know those simple choices were part of their plan. When Elena stepped out of the car and felt Sylvia's fingers unclip her seatbelt for the first time in years, when she saw Talia avoid her eyes, when the tires kicked dust into her face as the car sped off and disappeared down the empty road, something inside her cracked in a way that would never go back to what it was. They thought they had erased her. No phone, no wallet, no easy way home. Just a silent gas station, a shocked clerk watching from the window, and a pregnant woman holding her belly and whispering, "Why?" Marcus thought his life would be easier without her. Talia thought she had finally won. Sylvia thought she had cleared the family name of someone not good enough. What none of them knew was this. The woman they threw away had a secret, even she hadn't fully opened yet. A sealed letter from her grandfather's lawyers waiting on the living room table at home, and a legacy timed to release on the very birthday she thought everyone had forgotten. This isn't just a story about being abandoned. It's about what happens when the people who betray you discover you were never as weak or as poor as they hoped. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Elena's voice fade back into silence. When you click that button, you stand with every woman left behind and every quiet soul who chose to rise. Please, subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. The sound of a drawer slamming echoed through the quiet house, sharp, sudden, intense before the scene softened into its usual calm. Elena Marin, 29 years old, 7 months pregnant, stood alone in the living room, one hand on her belly, the other steadying a stack of unpaid bills she had been sorting since morning. She was the kind of woman everyone leaned on without thinking, the steady heart of her family, the quiet helper no one ever thanked out loud. Her 30th birthday was tomorrow. There was no cake, no balloons, no surprise, just envelopes, due dates, and a baby's tiny clothes folded on the couch. There was no cake, no balloons, no surprise. Just envelopes, due dates, and a baby's tiny clothes folded on the couch. She hadn't even reminded anyone. Habit taught her to downplay her own needs. Elena had lived her whole life believing in duty. Her grandfather had raised her after her parents passed away when she was young, and though she rarely talked about it, he was the only person who ever taught her unconditional love. The house she lived in now wasn't technically hers. It was in her husband Marcus's name. Elena never cared for property or status. She only cared about building a peaceful life, something gentle enough for her future daughter to grow inside. Her grandfather's old belongings still sat in a single wooden box in her bedroom closet, his pocket watch, his letters, and a few documents she never opened because she couldn't bear to stir memories that still hurt. She owned nothing valuable, not in the way people counted wealth, but she carried a quiet richness, patience, warmth, and a loyalty that once made her best friend Talia call her the safest place on earth. Now, as Elena folded a tiny pink baby shirt, she smiled to herself. "She'll be here soon," she whispered. The child was her anchor, her joy, her reason to endure anything. Marcus Marin, her husband of 5 years, entered the room just then. He was 32, polished, confident, and once the man who made her feel chosen. Lately, though, something had changed in him. He spoke less. He stayed out more. His phone never left his pocket anymore. Elena stepped closer, lifting her face for a simple kiss. For years, that movement had been automatic between them. This time Marcus leaned back slightly, as if even that small closeness was too much. "I need to shower," he muttered, eyes already shifting away as he walked toward the hallway. The rejection landed softly but painfully. Elena blinked, covering the sting with a small smile he never turned to see. Before she could process the moment, another voice called from the hallway. "Elena, honey, I can't read these labels. My eyes are too tired." Sylvia Marin. Marcus's mother, 62, sharp-tongued and sharp-eyed, sat at the kitchen table with her weekly medication spread out. Sylvia never liked Elena, though she never said it directly. Her tone always carried quiet judgment, like Elena wasn't good enough, organized enough, or strong enough. Elena calmly sat beside her. "Don't worry, I'll sort them." "You always do," Sylvia replied. Not as praise but as expectation. As Elena sorted pill bottles into neat trays, labels and times memorized from habit, a familiar voice floated in from the front door. "Lena, are you busy?" Talia Reed stepped inside. 29, Elena's childhood best friend, the one who slept over when she was grieving, the one who celebrated every milestone with her. Months earlier, during the pregnancy announcement, Talia had squeezed Elena's hand with tears in her eyes, saying, "You deserve all the love in the world." That memory flickered now, sweet but slightly distant, as if belonging to a different life. Elena smiled warmly. "Just finishing up here. Come in." Talia walked into the kitchen, her perfume arriving before her footsteps. Sylvia didn't greet her with surprise. Instead, their eyes met for a fraction of a second. A small, tight glance shared between them, quick enough to miss, but loaded enough to bruise if noticed. Something in Elena's chest tightened, though she didn't yet understand why. Talia's grin was too bright. "Thought I'd drop by, check on you and the baby. You know I can't stay away." Elena felt grateful, though a small part of her wondered why Talia had been visiting Marcus's mother so often lately, especially on days when Elena was out at her prenatal classes. She brushed the thought away. Loyalty came naturally to her. Suspicion did not. After helping Sylvia finish, Elena returned to the living room to put away mail. As she separated junk from bills, her fingers brushed across a thick white envelope sealed with gold lettering, Ellison and Pierce Legal. Her heart skipped. Her grandfather's estate lawyers. She turned the envelope over. Her name was written clearly, her current address correct. A small printed line in the corner read, "Time-sensitive documents enclosed." Elena didn't open it. She believed, as always, that it was about property taxes or leftover paperwork she didn't have the energy to face. Birthdays, lawyers, money, it all felt heavy. He was gone. No envelope could bring him back. "Not today," she whispered, sliding it beneath the stack of bills on the small living room table. But as she turned away, the camera would have caught the slightest tremble in her hand. Before Betrayal, Elena's world looked simple from the outside. What people didn't see was the weight she carried for everyone else. Then, just as Elena reached for another baby outfit, Marcus's voice echoed sharply down the hallway. "Elena, we need to talk. Now." The demand sliced through the air, cold and urgent. Elena froze mid-step, unaware that this conversation would be the first crack in the ground beneath her feet, and buried under one ignored envelope, waited the truth that would outlive every lie around her. Later that afternoon, the sound hit her like a slap, whispers, hurried and urgent, coming from behind Marcus's closed office door. Elena froze at the top of the stairs, a basket of warm laundry in her arms, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop. She had simply walked past at the wrong moment, or maybe the right one. Marcus's voice was low, tight. "You need to stop coming here so often." She's starting to notice. Talia's voice answered, softer, but unmistakably, her best friend's. "She won't suspect anything. Elena trusts me more than anyone." The words sliced through the quiet hallway. And then silence. Elena stood perfectly still, afraid even her breathing would expose her. She tried to convince herself they were talking about something innocent, something harmless. Maybe they meant Sylvia noticing. Maybe they meant the neighbors. But nothing about their tone sounded harmless. The scene slowed as she stepped back from the door, her mind spinning. Warm laundry pressed against her belly as if grounding her. She whispered to her unborn daughter, "It's okay. Mama's here." But even her own voice felt unsteady. Elena didn't want to believe anything was wrong, but patterns don't lie. She carried the laundry to the bedroom, her thoughts heavy. She remembered a time years ago when Talia had wrapped an arm around her after a heartbreak and said, "If anyone ever hurts you, I'll fight them first." Back then, Elena believed it with her whole soul. But lately, things felt different. Marcus came home smelling like cologne she didn't own. Talia arrived unannounced more often than before. Sylvia watched Elena with eyes that seemed to evaluate instead of care. And now whispers she wasn't meant to hear. Elena set the laundry on the bed and began folding slowly, trying to calm her thoughts. When she dug into Marcus's work pants looking for socks, she found something that changed the temperature in the room. A receipt, a spa visit, 2 guests. The date matched the afternoon. Marcus said he had a long meeting. She pulled out another receipt from the same pocket, this one from a jewelry shop. A bracelet. Elegant, expensive, and not one she ever received. Her hands trembled. She sat down on the edge of the bed, her breath catching. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe the bracelet was for Sylvia. Maybe the spa day was a work event. Maybe Talia had been helping him choose something for Elena, and he just hadn't given it yet. She tried to force these thoughts to make sense, but her heart argued back. If the gift was for her, he would have given it to her. If the spa trip was for work, why hide the receipt? The ceiling felt heavy above her. The room felt too quiet. Her baby kicked gently inside her, as if asking what was wrong. Elena whispered, "I don't know." Later that afternoon, she stepped outside to check the mailbox, hoping fresh air would clear her mind. That's when a familiar voice called from across the driveway. "Afternoon, Elena." Karen Willis, their friendly neighbor in her early 40s, waved while watering her flowers. Karen was talkative and kind, the sort of woman who noticed details without trying. Elena smiled, though her heart wasn't in it. "Hi, Karen. How are you?" "Oh, I'm good," Karen replied. "By the way, I saw Talia's car here again yesterday. Thought you two were having another girls' day." Elena froze mid-step. Yesterday? She had been at her prenatal class yesterday. Marcus had insisted she go, saying he'd be working from home and that Sylvia would rest in her room. Karen kept talking casually, unaware of the storm forming in Elena's chest. "I figured she was helping you get ready for the baby. She sure comes by a lot these days." Elena forced a smile, but inside, something cracked. Talia wasn't helping her. Talia hadn't even texted her all week. So why was she at the house when Elena wasn't home? Inside the house again, Elena closed the door gently behind her, not out of calmness, but because she was afraid if she didn't, she would slam it. She leaned her back against it, breathing slowly, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. Her mind replayed everything. The whispers, the shared glance in the kitchen, Marcus pulling away from her kiss, the receipts, Karen's casual comment about Talia's car. Piece by piece, a picture she didn't want to see began forming. She sat at the kitchen table, her fingers brushing the rim of her water glass, trying to keep her breathing steady. "Why would my best friend be here when I wasn't?" she whispered. Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, worried, shaken, almost afraid of her own thoughts. Suspicion begins as a whisper, but truth always speaks louder. Elena stood up slowly, realizing she could no longer ignore the signs. Something was happening around her, something she wasn't being told. Just then, a soft beep came from Marcus's office, a familiar electronic click as the door lock disengaged. Footsteps followed. Marcus was coming out. Elena straightened instinctively, and the office door opened. But it wasn't Marcus who stepped out. It was Talia. Her hand still on the doorknob. Talia froze when she saw Elena standing there. "Elena," she said quickly, forcing a thin smile. "I was just helping Marcus with some files for his mom." She got confused with her paperwork again. Before Elena could answer, Talia slipped past her toward the stairs, the office door closing softly behind her with a quiet click. Some alliances are not formed overnight, but they leave footprints if you know where to look. The argument started the second the office door latched shut behind Talia. Marcus's voice exploded inside the room, sharp, angry, full of pressure. "You can't just walk out there like that, Talia. She was right there. She saw you." The intensity hit the air like thunder. "Talia Reed, Elena's childhood best friend. 29 years old. The same woman who once knew every secret. Elena had stood stiffly in the center of Marcus's office. Her chest rose and fell quickly. She was nervous but trying to look confident. The house outside grew quiet again, unaware that inside this one room, Elena's world was being rewritten. Marcus paced behind his desk, running a hand through his hair. "You're going to ruin everything. She already heard us yesterday." Talia's jaw tightened. "You're the one who wanted to talk in here with the door half open." "It was locked," Marcus snapped. "She shouldn't even be near my office." The lock, the way it had beeped open when he emerged before. Elena never entered this space without him telling her to. They had counted on that. Until today, when Talia stepped out at the wrong moment. Slowly, the energy shifted. The explosion of anger softened into something more dangerous. Quiet planning. Sylvia Marin, Marcus's 62-year-old mother, entered the room next. She didn't knock. She never did. She stepped in and moved with purpose, closing the blinds as if she had done this many times before. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't sudden. This was coordination. This wasn't spontaneous betrayal. It was planned. Sylvia turned her sharp eyes toward them. "You two need to get your story straight," she said. Her voice was calm but carried the tone of someone used to giving orders. "Elena is too trusting, but she's not stupid." Talia crossed her arms, her voice defensive. "I told you she wouldn't check the office. She never comes in here unless Marcus tells her to." Marcus glared. "She was in the hallway, Talia, and Karen mentioned your car again. If Elena puts it together, then you control the story first." Sylvia cut in, as if the solution were simple. "Make her feel guilty. Make it her fault." "You've done it before." Marcus looked down, jaw clenching. He had done it before. Every time Elena raised a concern, he'd turned it into an overreaction, a misunderstanding, pregnancy hormones. Sylvia walked behind his chair and rested a hand on his shoulder. "You've let this go on too long, Marcus. She was never right for you. Her background, her lack of ambition. She drags you down." She spoke as if Elena wasn't the woman who cooked meals, handled bills, cared for Sylvia's health, and tried endlessly to please her. Talia's eyes flickered with something between guilt and agreement. "She's comfortable," Talia said quietly. "Too comfortable." "You said it yourself." Marcus exhaled shakily. I feel trapped, Mom. Elena doesn't understand me anymore. She's focused on the baby, on routine, on everything except us." Talia stepped closer, her voice softer but laced with confidence. "Marcus, she was never the right match for you. You said it yourself, she's clingy, emotional. She doesn't get your world anymore." She hesitated, then added, "I understand you better." Marcus looked at her, and the silence that followed confirmed what Elena feared but didn't know yet. This wasn't about a mistake. This wasn't about a brief lapse of judgment. This was an affair built on dissatisfaction, resentment, and shared selfishness. Talia continued, voice trembling from her own fear. "And once the baby comes, she'll need you even more. You'll lose everything. Your freedom, your peace, your goals." She shook her head. "She'll pull you down with her." Her words settled into the air like poison. Marcus nodded slowly, as if agreeing with a story they had already told themselves too many times. Sylvia watched them both, satisfied. She had wanted Elena out for years, and now she finally had leverage. She leaned back in Marcus's office chair, folding her hands. "Well," Sylvia said quietly, "we have a plan. And tomorrow, everything changes." Marcus stiffened. "Already? Tomorrow?" "Yes," Sylvia said. She spoke with the cool certainty of someone who believed she was right. "You take her for a drive. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere she can't just walk home from. You know the old gas station on Highway 12? She paused, letting the idea settle. "You pull in. Tell her to step out and stretch. We drive away." Talia swallowed. "That's extreme." "So is a divorce with property division and child support," Sylvia replied. "You want a clean slate? This is how you get it. She has no car, no family here, no one but us. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. This was betrayal carved in stone. This was their alliance. This was the moment Elena's fate was sealed. And Elena had no idea the people she loved were preparing to discard her. Outside the office door, light footsteps creaked on the stairs, hesitant, familiar. Elena. She paused just beyond the door, one hand on the railing, closer than any of them realized. The closer the truth comes to the surface, the faster betrayal prepares to strike. The next morning, the morning they had chosen, began with a jolt. Marcus slammed the bedroom door loud enough to shake the frame. "Elena, get ready," he said sharply. "We're going for a drive. We need to clear our minds." The intensity in his voice hit her like cold water. He rarely woke her that abruptly. Elena, 7 months pregnant and moving slower these days, blinked in confusion. "A drive? Now?" "Yes," Marcus replied, tugging open the wardrobe without looking at her. "It'll help you relax. We need to talk. Away from the house. Away from everything." The edge in his voice should have warned her. But instead, she grasped at the possibility that he wanted to reconnect. After the last few strange days, the whispering, the receipts, Talia stepping out of his office like she belonged there. Elena desperately wanted a sign that her marriage wasn't falling apart. She softened her tone. "Okay, maybe it will help." The scene slowed as she changed clothes carefully, breathing deeply, telling herself that this might be the moment they talked honestly. Maybe Marcus was ready to explain. Maybe he wanted to fix the distance between them. Maybe she was overthinking. She touched her belly. "Maybe this will be good for us," she whispered to her unborn daughter, wanting the words to be true. When she stepped into the living room, Talia was already standing near the door, bright smile plastered on her face. Talia, her best friend, the woman she trusted, looked completely at ease, as if early morning surprise drives were normal. "Talia?" Elena asked softly. "You're coming too?" Talia nodded, brushing imaginary dust off her jacket. "Of course," Marcus said. "You've been stressed. I thought I'd tag along, keep you company. Make sure you're comfortable." Her tone was cheerful, but her eyes darted quickly toward Marcus, as if checking for approval. Elena tried to ignore the rush of nervousness moving through her. "Thanks," she said quietly. "That's thoughtful." Just as they headed for the door, Sylvia appeared from the hallway. Sylvia always seemed to show up when Elena least expected it. Today, she wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sweetheart," Sylvia said sweetly, "leave your phone here. Let it charge. You don't need distractions today. Just relax and enjoy the drive." This was out of character. Sylvia never reminded her to rest. She never suggested Elena switch off. She barely cared if Elena sat down during the day. A quiet alarm rang in Elena's mind. "I'll just put it in my bag," Elena began. Marcus cut in quickly. "No, leave the bag too. We're not going far, and I've got my wallet. You don't need to carry extra weight in your condition." His words sounded caring on the surface, but something colder hid underneath. Logic formed in her mind. He didn't want her to call anyone, didn't want her to check messages, didn't want her to reach out if something felt wrong. Her fingers hovered over her phone and small purse on the side table before she reluctantly set them both down. "All right, if that's what you want." As they walked to the car, hope is the softest place to hide a knife. The car ride began quietly, too quietly. Elena sat in the passenger seat, watching trees pass by, trying to ignore the tension. Sylvia sat behind her. Talia sat behind Marcus. For a short, hopeful moment, Elena let herself imagine this was a family trying to heal. Marcus gripped the wheel in silence, jaw tight, eyes fixed ahead. She tried to start a conversation. "Marcus, is everything okay between us?" "Later," he answered. That one word made her heart sink. The silence that followed was heavy enough to make her chest ache. Elena turned her face toward the window, clinging to hope even as it crumbled inside her. After about 20 minutes, something strange happened. Marcus took a sharp turn off the main road, a turn he had never taken before. Not on any trip, not on any drive. It wasn't the way to the beach. It wasn't the way to the park. It wasn't the way to any place they usually went. Elena's breath caught. Marcus, this isn't the right direction. He didn't answer. Another turn. This one, harsher. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. Talia leaned forward from the back seat, her voice forced and slightly shaky. Everything's fine, Lena. Just trust us. Trust. A word that suddenly felt empty. Elena's hands slowly moved to her stomach, as if instinctively protecting her child. Up ahead, she saw a small, isolated gas station in the distance. Marcus was driving straight toward it with a determined expression she had never seen before. And deep inside, something cold whispered, "This isn't a drive to clear your mind. Some moments don't break a life. They split it in two." Marcus slammed on the brakes so hard, the car jerked forward, throwing Elena against her seatbelt. The sudden stop hit her body with violent force. Her breath caught, her hands flew to her stomach, and for a moment, the shock froze every muscle in her body. "Marcus," she gasped. "What are you doing?" The car sat in front of an empty, quiet gas station, no other cars, no movement, only the dull hum of a flickering overhead light. The place felt wrong, eerie, chosen on purpose. Marcus didn't answer. The intensity of the moment was immediate, too sharp, too sudden, and Elena's mind scrambled to understand. Slowly, the scene softened into a chilling quiet. The engine hummed. Wind brushed against the windows. The emptiness around them felt like a warning. Elena turned her head toward Marcus, searching for his eyes, for reassurance, for anything familiar. But his face was cold stone. He finally spoke, but not with comfort. "Step out for a minute. Stretch your legs. You've been sitting too long." His tone was flat, practiced. Talia leaned forward from the back seat, her smile stretched too wide, too forced. "He's right, Lena. Come on, it's good for the baby. Just a minute." Her voice trembled slightly, not with fear, but with guilt she was trying to bury. Elena frowned. "Why here? This doesn't make sense." Sylvia, who rarely touched Elena, suddenly reached across and unbuckled her seatbelt with quick, sharp fingers. "Go on, dear," she said with a sugary smile. "Just step out for a moment. We'll grab some water and snacks." Everything happened too fast. Before Elena could protest, the car door swung open beside her, letting in a cold breeze that prickled her skin. Her heart pounded. Her baby shifted anxiously inside her belly. This wasn't right. This wasn't safe. This wasn't normal. Still, she stepped out slowly, one hand gripping the doorframe, the other wrapping protectively around her stomach. She trusted too much. She wanted too badly to believe she was overthinking. The gravel beneath her shoes felt unstable. The air felt heavier than before. It takes only 15 seconds to end a life someone worked years to build. Elena turned back toward the car, confused and scared. "Marcus? What's happening?" For one horrifying second, she thought he might get out and explain. Tell her she misunderstood. Tell her everything was fine. Tell her he loved her and this was all a bad joke. But he didn't move. He shifted the car into drive. Talia avoided Elena's eyes, staring straight ahead. Sylvia pressed her lips together, watching like someone waiting for a performance to end. And then, the car lurched forward. "Marcus!" Elena cried, stepping toward it instinctively, her hands reaching out. "Marcus, wait!" Her voice broke, cracking under the weight of disbelief. But the car accelerated. Dust kicked up behind the tires, gravel sprayed. The sound of the engine grew smaller and smaller. Within seconds, they were gone. Elena stood alone in the stillness, her breath trembling, her arms clinging to her stomach as if shielding the only remaining part of her world. The silence screamed louder than the engine. Her knees wobbled. She blinked rapidly, hoping she was still asleep in her bed at home, that this was some cruel dream she would wake from. But reality stayed. Reality burned. Her phone was on the living room table. Her wallet and ID were in her purse beside it. Her husband, her best friend, and her mother-in-law had driven away in the only car she had access to. She took one small shaky step forward, staring at the empty road where the car disappeared. Her voice came out as a whisper, fragile and breaking. "Why?" There was no answer. Not from Marcus. Not from Talia. Not from Sylvia. But someone had seen. Inside the small gas station booth stood Rosa Alvarez, a gas station clerk in her mid-40s. Rosa had been sweeping the floor when she witnessed the entire moment, the car pulling in, the confusion on the pregnant woman's face, and then the sudden abandonment. Rosa pressed a hand to the glass, her expression filled with shock and worry. Moments later, she hurried outside. "Are you okay?" she called out gently. Her voice traveled across the cold air like the first sign of human warmth. Rosa didn't know it yet, but she would become an important witness, an anchor of truth in the storm waiting to unfold. Elena didn't answer right away. She couldn't. Her throat was tight, her thoughts tangled, her heart shattered into too many pieces to gather. She looked down at her belly. Her baby kicked softly, as if sensing her distress. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory, an 11-year-old Elena sitting on his lap as he pressed a gold pocket watch into her hand. Flashback insert. "You're stronger than you know," he had whispered. Tears pooled in her eyes, not because she believed those words, but because she desperately needed them to be true. Rosa stepped closer, speaking calmly. "Listen, I saw what happened. I saw their license plate. You're not crazy. You're not imagining this. They left you." The pain pulsed through Elena, but beneath the pain grew something else. A spark, a shift, the first breath of a woman who had nothing left to lose. But betrayal wasn't her ending, it was her beginning. A car approached in the distance, slow, unfamiliar, its headlights creeping closer, forcing Elena to take a step back. Unsure if this stranger would be her rescue or another danger. Sometimes the next chapter begins with the opening of an envelope you were never meant to ignore. The same car that had pulled up to the gas station screeched to a stop in front of Elena's house, and the sudden motion jolted her forward. "Careful," the driver said, reaching out as she steadied herself. He was a middle-aged man named Paul, someone who had simply seen a pregnant woman standing alone at a gas station and couldn't drive past without helping. He didn't ask many questions. He didn't need to. The fear in Elena's eyes told him enough. The intensity of the ride home lingered as she stepped out of the car. Her legs trembled, her breath uneven. She thanked Paul with a shaky voice. "Thank you for stopping. I don't know what I would have done." He gave her a sympathetic nod. "You take care of yourself, all right? If you need to call someone, go inside and use your phone. You're not alone." Then he drove off, leaving her standing in front of the house where everything had fallen apart just hours earlier. The door felt heavier than usual as she pushed it open. The quiet inside was suffocating. No voices, no warmth, no explanation waiting for her. No one was home. Marcus's car wasn't in the driveway. Talia's car was gone. Sylvia's room door stood slightly open, the bed made. For a brief second, Elena realized something. They hadn't just left her at the gas station. They had walked back into their lives without her. Slowly, her panic softened into a numb kind of stillness. She walked into the living room. On the small table by the couch sat exactly what she had left behind that morning. Her phone on the charger, her small purse with her wallet inside, and the stack of mail she'd been sorting before the drive. The familiar envelope caught her eye again, Ellison and Pierce Legal. Her fingers hovered above it, shaking. She had ignored it before. She thought it was about taxes or leftover paperwork she didn't have energy for. But after what happened today, she couldn't ignore anything anymore. The same letter she dismissed now held her future. She tore it open with trembling hands. A formal document slid out. Her eyes skimmed over the printed lines, words blurring until one sentence snapped into focus. "Notification of inheritance release, effective on your 30th birthday." Her breath caught. Her 30th birthday was today. Her heart thudded loudly, drowning out the world around her. A phone number was printed at the bottom. With her cell still charging and untouched, she grabbed the old landline on the side table and dialed. The line rang once, twice. Then a steady, calm voice answered. "This is attorney Lydia Chen." Elena swallowed hard. "My name is Elena Marin. I received a notice from your office about my grandfather." There was a small pause, papers shuffling. Then Lydia replied, her tone gentle but firm. "Ah, yes. I've been expecting your call." My call?" Elena whispered. Yes, Lydia said. Your grandfather left instructions that we contact you immediately on the day you turned 30, but only after you reached out first. He wanted this to be your decision, your moment. Elena shut her eyes as emotion built inside her. Her grandfather, her only real family, had always believed in her. Even after his passing, he still cared enough to plan for her future. A soft montage flickered through her mind. Him teaching her to fish at a quiet lake. His warm laugh as she proudly showed him her first catch. Him tying her shoelaces when she was too small to reach. Him handing her a gold pocket watch and whispering, "You're stronger than you know." Her throat tightened. Tears blurred her vision. What did he leave me? She whispered. Lydia's voice remained calm but carried weight. Everything he owned. His full estate, properties, accounts, investments. All of it. Elena's lips parted in disbelief. All of it? Yes, Lydia confirmed. You are now the sole heir. The inheritance vests today. We've held it in trust until your 30th birthday. The room seemed to tilt as the truth settled over her. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't abandoned without support. Her grandfather had given her more protection than she ever realized. This betrayal today, this emptiness, it didn't have to define her next steps. She placed a hand on her belly, breathing deeper, slower, steadier. Her baby kicked gently, as if sensing the shift in her spirit. She didn't rise with rage. She rose with strategy, Lydia continued. I suggest we meet as soon as possible. Tomorrow morning, if you're able. There is a great deal to discuss your rights, the estate, and how to secure yourself and your child. Elena nodded, wiping her tears. Yes, I'll be there. She hung up the phone. For the first time that day, she stood tall. The same house that witnessed her abandonment had also just watched her claim a new beginning. Her gaze drifted toward Marcus's office door, half open, dark, waiting. She felt something pull her forward, some quiet intuition telling her the truth in this house wasn't finished revealing itself. She stepped toward it. Behind closed doors, secrets don't stay quiet forever. Elena burst into Marcus's office with such force that the door slammed against the wall. The sound echoed through the house, sharp, angry, alive. For a moment she stood there trembling, expecting to find Marcus, expecting a confrontation, expecting answers. But the room was empty. The silence inside felt like a cruel reminder of everything she now knew. His chair was pushed back. Papers were stacked on the desk. A mug sat half-finished, a faint ring of coffee at the bottom. The light smell of Talia's perfume still lingered in the air. Her rage melted into something quieter, something clearer. She walked slowly around the room, breathing deeply, letting her eyes adjust to the space she had never really entered before. This was where he kept his secrets, his passwords, his files, his life. She didn't cry. She didn't crumble. She simply inhaled and exhaled like someone preparing for the next part of a long journey. Revenge is strongest when silent. Elena reached into her pocket and took out the note she had scribbled with attorney Lydia Chen's address and meeting time. Inheritance had given her options. But justice needed proof. It needed planning. It needed allies. She looked at the computer on Marcus's desk, at the filing cabinet where he kept documents labeled personal, at the drawer that had always been locked. She didn't touch anything. Not yet. Instead, she stepped back and whispered to her daughter, "We will do this the right way." Days later, Elena sat inside a quiet office space across from two people who would become the pillars of her fight. Lydia Chen had kept her promise. At their first meeting, she listened to everything, how Elena was abandoned, the gas station, the car leaving, the years of quiet loyalty. Lydia had then referred her to two trusted professionals. Now those two sat across from Elena. Victor Hale, early 40s, private investigator, calm eyes and steady posture, introduced himself first. "Mrs. Marin, I'm here to help you gather every piece of evidence. Nothing will be left unclear." Next was attorney Donovan Pierce, mid-30s, sharp-minded and direct. He worked in the same Ellison and Pierce network as Lydia, but specialized in family law. "Elena," he said gently, "you're not alone anymore. We'll handle this one step at a time. Elena nodded, fingers interlocked tightly on her lap. Her heart was still bruised, but her mind sharp now was awake. The security of her grandfather's inheritance had allowed her to sit here without worrying about the cost of help. Rosa Alvarez, the gas station clerk, sat beside her. Rosa had driven into town to give her statement. Her kindness that day had become something bigger now. A witness willing to stand for truth. Victor leaned forward, clicking a button on his small remote. A screen lit up on the wall. First, he said, we pulled the gas station camera footage. It took a few days and a warrant, but we have it. On the screen appeared the exact moment Elena stepped out of the car. The truth played in silent, painful clarity. The confusion on her face, the car speeding away, her hands clutching her stomach. Rosa lowered her eyes, whispering, I'm so sorry you went through that. Elena swallowed hard but kept watching, letting the pain strengthen her instead of weaken her. Victor clicked again. Next, the GPS logs from Marcus's car, obtained through a subpoena. His car stopped at that station for exactly 45 seconds. The speed right after? Well above the limit. Elena's stomach twisted. He clicked again. Then we obtained the text messages between Marcus and Talia. Lines of betrayal filled the screen plans, excuses, whispers about getting rid of her before the baby complicates things, and references to Sylvia's support. Elena's eyes burned, but she stayed firm. Donovan wrote notes as Victor continued. We also traced financial transfers. Sylvia has been moving money from accounts tied to you payments you never approved. We compared signatures, several appear forged. The betrayal was bigger than Elena imagined. Not just emotional, not just personal, it was financial deception too. Everything you see here, Victor said, is admissible in court, and we will collect more. Donovan placed a contract in front of her. Elena, once we file this, the legal process starts. Divorce, custody, asset freeze, full exposure. Elena hesitated not from fear, but from the gravity of what this moment meant. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was taking control. Slowly she signed her name. Her signature wasn't shaky, it was strong. Victor gave a small nod of respect. We've already started digging through Marcus's records. If there's anything else he's hiding, we'll find it. Rosa squeezed Elena's hand. You deserve better. I'll testify. I saw everything. Elena felt warmth in her chest, proof that kindness still existed somewhere in her world. Donovan leaned back, studying the piles of evidence. Elena, he said with a tone both calm and serious, this won't just win in court. This will ruin them. Elena closed her eyes for a moment and breathed, her baby kicking softly as if sensing her new strength. Just as she stood to leave, Victor looked up from his laptop, confusion flashing across his face. Elena, there's something else in Marcus's records, something big. He turned the screen toward her, and her whole body tensed. On the screen was a recently approved life insurance policy in her name, taken out months ago. The beneficiary, Marcus. The payout, more than enough to cover his debts and build a new life without her. Sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free. It proves someone was willing to profit from your disappearance. Weeks later, the gavel slammed against wood with such force it echoed like thunder. Everyone in the courtroom flinched except Elena. She sat straight, steady, composed, nothing like the abandoned woman who had stood crying at a gas station weeks earlier. Today, she wore quiet strength like armor. Her hands rested gently on her pregnant belly, a reminder of what she was fighting for. Marcus Marin, her husband, stood beside his attorney at the opposite table. His face was pale, his jaw tight. Gone was the confidence he always carried. Today, he looked cornered. Next to him sat Talia Reed, Elena's former best friend, dressed in trembling guilt. She kept her eyes down, unable or unwilling to meet Elena's gaze, and beside them, stiff and furious like a shaken hive, sat Sylvia Marin, Marcus's mother. She held her purse tightly in her lap, her lips pinched with frustration. She never imagined she would have to defend herself in a courtroom against her own daughter-in-law. They expected a broken girl. Instead, they faced an empire. At Elena's table sat her lawyer, Donovan Pierce, sharp-suited and calm. To her left sat Rosa Alvarez, the gas station clerk, ready to testify. Behind them, Victor Hale, the private investigator, prepared the final files and exhibits. And at the front of the room, overseeing every moment with steady authority, sat Judge Marianne Torres, known for her fairness and zero tolerance for lies. The hearing began with the evidence presentation. Donovan stood first. Your Honor, we will begin with the events of the day Mrs. Marin was abandoned. He clicked a remote. The courtroom screen came alive. There, in cold, unforgiving clarity, was the video of Elena stepping out of Marcus's car at the gas station. Her confusion was visible, her fear, her vulnerability. Then the car speeding away. Someone in the audience gasped softly. Marcus closed his eyes, jaw clenching. Talia shifted in her seat. Sylvia pressed her lips together so tightly they turned white. Elena kept her gaze forward. She refused to let herself cry again. Not here, not in front of them. The video ended. Silence followed. Donovan spoke calmly. Mrs. Marin was 7 months pregnant when this occurred. She was left with no transportation, no phone, and no wallet. Judge Torres nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. Next came the text messages. Donovan projected them on the screen. Messages between Marcus and Talia. She's too emotional. We have to do it before the baby comes. Your mother supports us. She said, Elena is slowing you down. Gas station is easy. No cameras she'll notice. Donovan turned toward Marcus. Unfortunately for you, Mr. Marin, there were cameras. Marcus stared at the table. Talia's hands shook in her lap. Sylvia looked away, her nostrils flaring. Judge Torres frowned. The courtroom reporter typed rapidly, recording everything. Then Rosa testified. She stepped forward gently, hands clasped. Your Honor, I saw the whole thing. The car left before she even understood what was happening. She looked terrified. Rosa's voice softened. No one should be abandoned like that, especially not someone carrying a child. The courtroom murmured with sympathy. Elena felt a rush of gratitude for Rosa's bravery. Victor Hale presented the next segment, financial documents. The court should be aware, Victor said, that Miss Sylvia Marin has been moving funds out of accounts tied to Elena without her knowledge. He pointed to the screen. Several transactions show forged signatures. We obtained confirmation from the bank's forensic analyst. Sylvia's head snapped up. Those accounts were for the family, Victor countered smoothly. They were in Elena's name, and she never authorized these withdrawals. Gasps filled the courtroom. Sylvia's lawyer placed a steady hand on her arm, trying to calm her. Judge Torres looked stern. Forgery is a serious accusation. Do you have proof? Victor handed forward papers. Yes. Signature comparisons, timestamps, and bank confirmations, Your Honor. Sylvia's confidence cracked into panic. Donovan nodded at Victor, then clicked to the next slide. And finally, Your Honor, we present the most disturbing document of all. On the screen appeared the life insurance policy Victor had discovered. A policy taken out in Mrs. Elena Marin's name, Donovan explained, with Mr. Marcus Marin as the sole beneficiary, applied for shortly before the planned abandonment. The coverage amount is substantial. He let the silence stretch. Combined with the deliberate act of leaving a pregnant woman at an isolated gas station, this raises serious concerns about intent and safety. Marcus's attorney shifted uncomfortably. Judge Torres's eyes hardened. Mr. Marin, did your wife know about this policy? Marcus hesitated. I didn't think it was important. Donovan's voice cut through his excuse. Not important, or not convenient to mention. The courtroom felt the shift. This was no longer just cruelty. It was danger. Donovan concluded the evidence presentation. Your Honor, what you see here is not a misunderstanding. It is a coordinated betrayal involving emotional cruelty, planned abandonment, financial manipulation, and deliberate endangerment of a pregnant woman. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Torres leaned forward slightly, her eyes firm and focused. She looked directly at Marcus, then at Talia, then at Sylvia. Her voice calm, measured, and sharp enough to cut the air. Mr. Marin, Miss Reed, Miss Marin. This evidence is overwhelming. The room tensed. Marcus swallowed hard. Talia's breath trembled. Sylvia gripped her purse as if it were the last thing keeping her from falling apart. And Elena finally allowed herself a slow inhale, one filled not with pain, but with power. For the first time, they realized the cost of cruelty. Judge Torres lifted the final document, preparing to announce her ruling when the courtroom doors swung open behind them, and a familiar voice called Elena's name. Everyone turned. Elena froze. It was Lydia Chen, holding a folder marked with Elena's name, proof of her inheritance and financial independence, prepared to ensure Marcus couldn't touch a cent. Sometimes the greatest downfall begins when the world sees exactly who you tried to destroy. The courthouse doors flew open with a violent crash as Marcus burst outside, shoving past reporters and ignoring the flash of cameras. His face was frantic, pale, desperate, so different from the man who once abandoned his pregnant wife at a gas station without a backward glance. "Elena!" he shouted, voice cracking. The intensity of his panic cut through the courthouse courtyard. The noise of the world seemed to fall away as he sprinted toward her. Elena stood on the courthouse steps, breathing steadily, one hand gently covering her belly. Judge Torres had just issued a strong temporary ruling. Primary custody to Elena, immediate restraining order against Marcus, and a freeze on any assets he tried to hide. Sylvia faced separate fraud charges. Talia's reputation was shattered before everyone who heard the testimony. Talia and Sylvia trailed behind Marcus now, both shaken by the ruling. Neither looked victorious. The three of them stood exposed before the world, judged, embarrassed, and defeated. But Elena, she looked calm. She looked whole. Marcus reached her first. He grabbed her arms, almost dropping to his knees right there. "Elena, please," he begged. "I made a mistake, a horrible mistake. We can fix this. We can fix us." The intensity softened into a slow, deep ache as Elena stared at the man she once loved. His eyes were red, filled with panic. His breathing was fast and broken. He looked like someone drowning. Inside her, however, something was quiet like a lake after a storm. The courtroom had changed something in her. She wasn't the same woman he left on that gravel road. The man who abandoned her now begged for her mercy. Elena pulled her arms back gently, not in anger, but in clarity. Behind Marcus, Talia Reed stood with her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She looked furious, not at the situation, but at Marcus. "This is your fault," Talia snapped at him. "You said she wouldn't fight back. You said she was too soft, too emotional." Elena blinked at those words, but she didn't break. She didn't even flinch. Talia continued, voice rising. "You told me she wouldn't take us to court. You said your mother would fix it." Sylvia Marin froze at that. The older woman stood on the sidewalk, her breaths uneven, one hand gripping a bench as if her body might give out. The humiliation of having her financial fraud exposed in court had cracked her pride wide open. Reporters circled, microphones raised, snapping photos of Sylvia's collapse, Talia's outrage, and Marcus's desperation. Elena stood still, protected by her own calmness, an emotional shield none of them could break now. Marcus reached for her again, his voice trembling. "Elena, I thought you didn't love me anymore. I thought you didn't care. I thought." Elena stopped him with a raised hand. She finally spoke, her voice soft but steady, like steel wrapped in silk. "You walked away first." The words didn't shout. They didn't shake. They simply ended something. Marcus's face crumpled. Talia looked away, jaw tight. Sylvia sank onto the bench completely, burying her face in her hands. Elena's eyes filled with quiet determination. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for truth, closure, and the safety of her unborn child. The crowd behind them whispered. Lawyers watched from the doorway. Even the courthouse guards paused to witness this moment, the final unraveling of a family built on lies. Marcus let out a broken sound, falling to his knees on the cold concrete. The courtyard held its breath. "Elena," he begged again, "please, please, don't leave me. I have nothing left without you." Elena looked down at him, not with hatred, not even satisfaction, but with the deep sadness of a woman who once believed in him completely. "You had everything," she said softly. And you threw it away. Talia scoffed loudly and stormed off, heels clacking against the pavement. She didn't look back. Marcus's downfall no longer served her. She would find her own way to survive. Sylvia remained frozen in shame, unable to rise, unable to defend herself. Marcus stayed on his knees. "Elena," he whispered, "I love you." Her heart tightened, not because she believed him, but because she finally understood something important. Love was never supposed to feel like begging for crumbs. She stepped back, lifting her chin. "Marcus, I don't need your love anymore." Silence followed, heavy, final. But Elena didn't need their suffering to feel whole. She turned away, ready to walk toward the future her grandfather had prepared for her. Away from courts, away from lies, away from the people who had tried to erase her. Just as Elena stepped down the final stair, a lawyer rushed out of the courthouse. "Mrs. Marin," he called breathlessly. There's something else you need to see. It was just filed, from Mr. Marin, and you need to read it immediately." Elena froze mid-step. Marcus's head jerked up in shock. Talia stopped walking away. Sylvia slowly lifted her tear-streaked face. The lawyer held out a document. "It's an emergency petition. He's asking the court to challenge your inheritance and claim joint control, arguing you're emotionally unstable and can't manage it alone." Elena's eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in tired disbelief. Of course he would make one last desperate move. Sometimes the final blow doesn't come from betrayal, but from the last act of someone who refuses to accept they've already lost. The newborn's cry broke through the quiet room like a sudden burst of life. Months had passed since the courthouse steps. Marcus's emergency petition had been denied. Judge Torres rejected his request to touch her inheritance or control her finances, citing the evidence of his abuse and abandonment. The divorce process was underway. Protective orders remained in place. Elena had not seen him since. Now Elena clutched her daughter close to her chest, breath trembling not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that she had reached the end of a storm and stepped into the beginning of a new world. The intensity of the moment washed over her, strong enough to make her knees weak. She stood inside her grandfather's restored estate, a large, peaceful home filled with sunlight and warm wooden floors. Renovations had finished only weeks before the birth. Fresh paint, open windows, a nursery made with care. Everything here felt like safety, like healing. The child in her arms cried again, softer this time. Elena rocked gently, whispering, "It's okay. Mama's here. You're home now." Her voice calmed the baby instantly. Slowly, the intensity faded into a soft, reflective, quiet. Elena walked to the window, looking out at the long driveway lined with tall trees her grandfather planted years before she was born. She felt him everywhere here, in the walls, in the land, in the way sunlight filtered through the leaves, exactly the way it had during her childhood. She wasn't saved by money. She was saved by the truth that she was worth more than the people who failed her. Behind her, footsteps approached. Attorney Lydia Chen, dressed in her usual calm professionalism, stepped into the nursery doorway. "She's beautiful," she said softly. "Your grandfather would have loved her." Elena smiled. "I hope she grows up with his strength." "She already has yours," Lydia replied. They shared a quiet moment, both knowing the journey that had brought Elena here. Betrayal, abandonment, court battles, a desperate last petition, unexpected inheritance, and now a child who represented everything pure and new. Lydia handed her a set of final documents. "These close the last of the estate transfers. Everything is officially yours now. The house, the land, the investments. You and your daughter are secure. And with the court's orders, Marcus has no claim to any of it." Elena thanked her, though gratitude felt small compared to the relief she felt inside. She no longer carried fear, no longer carried doubt, no longer carried the weight of people who never valued her. She pressed her lips gently against her daughter's forehead. "Baby girl," she whispered, "we're free." She stepped into the living room, sunlight warming her skin. Everything here felt like a promise, a life built on truth, strength, and self-worth. A life where no one could abandon her again. Her daughter's tiny hand reached up suddenly, gripping Elena's finger with surprising strength. Elena smiled, eyes soft with pride. Sometimes, being abandoned is how you discover where you truly belong. The camera slowly zoomed in on the baby's tiny fingers curled around Elena's,